My name is Joe Popp. In 2017, I took a tour of the 48 continental United States as a singer-songwriter on a motorcycle. This is my story. Popp over America.
I left early the next morning, and I realized during my drive that my tour is actually following the same path as my musical career. I left Jacksonville, Florida in 1990 to go to Tampa to join a band called Dogs on Ice. I played with them for 4 years before starting my eponymous band, Joe Popp. A lot of success in Tampa. I really liked being part of the scene back then. It was a hopeful feeling. I think we thought we were going to be the next Seattle or Athens. Keith Ulrey was and is still a big part of the Tampa music scene. He runs the record label New Granada and books and promotes shows. He also opened a record store called Microgroove in 2012 and let me play a gig there. What do you remember when you first started playing here in Tampa Bay?
Well, I'm born and raised here.
Oh, okay. So you,
native. And I don't know, I just immersed myself in the punk rock scene at the time, you know,
Sure.
Ybor City, Star Club, all that stuff. And when Pogo formed, just few years after that, and I don't know, the scene was just really hopping then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was pre-internet,
right.
Pre-digital download, any of that kind of stuff. So people, I think, were just hungry and desperate for original music, at least at the time, and you can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you know, we talked about the Stone Lounge earlier, and the
Yeah.
music scene, and places to play, Blue Chair music,
Right,
wherever, Gallery Film House, wherever shows happened.
Right.
And I don't know, it just, that personally, I just immersed myself into it, and that in itself is what inspired me. And I still kind of feel that here 25 years later, 30 years later. I still feel like I'm that guy trying to
carrying the torch
a little bit,
awesome,
maybe.
Man.
Sure.
Well, you're definitely doing it with this store.
Sure.
And how do you feel
Every
the scene
decade.
is now? Comparison to like that lull in '97. I moved out of here in 2000
Sure,
because
sure.
of that lull. So
yeah, there's still a lot of great bands, and there's
Okay.
still a lot of exciting things happening. Personally, as somebody who's never left the scene and always been a part of it, either through the shop or the label or my own band, there is a little bit of a dip right now. There's always going to be an ebb and flow.
Right.
We're in a little bit of the downward, you know, and it's not about quality bands. It's actually quantity. You know, there's just not really any. There's only a handful of bands that are really connecting with the public right now.
Right.
And I don't think that that's anything about the quality of the bands. I think it's about maybe the scene itself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people are really enamored with who the hot new band is, meaning on a national level. So, you know, somebody can play Ybor on a Friday night and the place is packed, and the local band that opened can be fitting and very popular, and that local band will play a week later and there's nobody at the show.
It's glowing. She's the only thing keeps me going. There's a radiance from the window, it's glowing. She's the only thing that keeps me going. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Talking to Keith and playing Microgroove was great. I saw so many old faces I haven't seen in a long while. It was like I was transported back to different times and places in my life. An old photographer friend of mine, Stacy Mathis, was there, and she offered to give me a ride to 88.5 WMNF, where I had an interview with another old scene stir, Scott Imrich.
For those of you who don't know Joe, like you just said, Joe's a big-time New York guy now.
Yeah.
But years ago, he was but a humble Tampa musician.
I was never humble. I was never humble, Scott.
His band, Dogs on Ice, was pretty legendary in these parts for many years. And after Dogs on Ice, you had Joe Popp, the band you humbly named after yourself.
Humbly, yeah.
And that went on for several years.
2 years, yeah.
How are your knees, man? Every picture I see of you, it's like every jump that you made, everything you jumped off of. Like here you are on the cover of Push and Rope in 1991, just jumping off the ground. It seemed like incrementally, like there was the Dogs on Ice jumps, and then there was the Joe Popp jumps, and so, as you got older, you jumped higher.
Right.
It seemed like there was a lot more air between the stage and your feet. So you've got the pilot's been shot.
Yep.
And what is going on now? What's going on with the series now? Where are you?
Well, the pilot's been shot, and the idea was to try to get a producer to help me, to follow me around and do it. And that never happened, as you know. Like, I never got a record deal. I never got all this stuff, So I'm like, I'm going to do it anyway by myself.
I would think maybe when this trip is over, all the adventures that you're going to go through, the rain you're going to ride through, the people you're going to meet, the food you're going to eat, I'm sure that's going to be pretty inspirational.
I hope so. We always hear these stories about people that are famous, and I always wonder about the people that didn't make it. Their path. That movie Anvil. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And that to me was such a fascinating story because it's like we play with Metallica. And,
it was really
all these
inspirational.
Bands, and they're like Anvil, and you're like, never heard of them.
I was talking with somebody, my brother-in-law, a couple of days ago, exactly about that movie and how he said it's like my favorite music documentary of all time because it's not about the band, it's about the journey of the band. Joe, thank you so much for coming by. Where are you headed to next? What's next?
My brother in Atlanta, or Woodstock, Georgia, actually.
Good to see you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
We're going to go back to 1991 and Dogs on Ice and Maladjusted now, going to the way back days.
I headed to my friend Anthony's house where I was staying. He was having this huge gathering for his extended family. His niece Quinn was graduating from high school.
Happy graduation to Quinn. Happy graduation to Quinn. Happy graduation, dear Quinn. Happy graduation to you.
We're gonna get cake now.
Before leaving for Georgia, I had to interview my old friend Anthony Carbone. Talk about the first time you met me and what were your impressions of it? Because we weren't really friends when I lived in Tampa.
We weren't, and I wasn't fond of you. I didn't like you.
Really?
And
now we're like best friends.
We're best friends.
Tell me about that arc.
You were like a fringe guy. Like we were never in that much contact. We probably saw each other seldomly, but when we did, we were kind of like, hey, I really didn't like you.
Why? And why was that?
I don't know. I just was intimidated. Maybe you were larger than life. You're big personality.
Right, yeah.
I think it kind of, I don't know.
Scared you?
Scared me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know you.
Tell us about your, should I say obsession or hobby. Your hobby about collecting antiques.
I started, my sister, Liana, my older sister, 4 years older, she collected Indian jewelry when she was in high school.
Okay.
So she didn't want to go to antique shows and flea markets by herself. So she should drag me along.
So you started as like a flea market bouncer. Is that how you started your career?
Like a flea market sidekick.
And I remember a specific story. You were with me in New York City, and we went to a watch shop.
Yeah.
And you haggled with, was it a woman or it was a man?
A woman. It was a foreign woman.
You haggled with this foreign woman, because we have foreign people in New York City. You haggled with this woman for it must have been a good 45 minutes, and I think it was over $10, wasn't it? It was like, the watch was $200. You're like, I am not going to pay more than $190 for this. And you got her down on the watch, you put it on your arm, we walked outside, and then the second hand fell off of the watch. So I'm like, that became the joke. Like,
right. Broken
watches. Are we going to go buy some broken watches next time you visit me in New York City?
Every time I visited New York, you would ask if we were going to go buy broken watches. Every time I talked to you and I was on the way to the flea market, an antique show, you're like, how many broken watches did you buy? So it was always our trademark.
You have a very, very specific design sense. And some of it is
questionable.
I don't know if it's questionable. It's just it's very specific to you.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you had decorated a place and I walked in, I could say Anthony Carbone decorated this place or designed it. And where do you think that comes from? Because it's kind of a combination of graphic design and antiques and vintage stuff. Some of it's somewhat restored. Some of it's very rough looking.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
where did your design sense come from?
I don't know. I think I just kind of everywhere. You know, like
You studied in college?
studied art history
At University of South Florida?
South Florida, and I did a semester abroad in Florence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't
so
even
I just
know
kind
that.
of, it was more like I just pick things up here and there as far as like what I like or what's appeasing.
And you combine your love of the estate sale stuff with your design sense. So you go out and you find this stuff, which I used to call junk, which I'm sure was offensive, you know, and then you put it in your house. Like you buy a big rusty old traffic light and you just stick it in your kid's room.
Right.
Maybe even against his will, some might argue. You know, and then you're like, I'm going to get you a Mario Brothers machine, which is the size of a refrigerator, and you plunk it in your kid's room. You're like, isn't that a great gift?
Congratulations.
Cole? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't like this game, or something like that. But you don't. That doesn't affect you.
Nah, I just
you
keep
do it,
going.
You know?
Keep going. It's for his own good.
What are your thoughts on Popp Over America?
Great. It's amazing.
What do you think is cool about it?
That you're, you know, living your dream. Going around the country on your motorcycle, just doing what you need to do.
Thanks for watching episode 3. If you're looking for more content, I'll be posting full interviews and concerts up on my YouTube channel.
Popp Over America is made possible by support from Alto Music, Arai Helmets, Corbin Motorcycle Seats, D'Addario Strings, Huffy Carbon Fiber Instrument Cases, Michelin Motorcycle Tires, Otherworld Computing, and Cena Bluetooth Motorcycle Devices. Stay tuned for the next episode of Popp Over America.